Hello and Merry Christmas to all of you. I'm hoping you're having a great time with family and friends as we get closer and closer to celebrating the day of our Savior's birth. Welcome to Morning Star Church. I'm Mike Schreiner, lead pastor, and today we're featuring a message series centered around the story of Christ's birth. We're calling it Christmas Extras. Now, the truth is, the story we're telling today is not found in the Bible. We've only speculated what it might have been like to have been in the background of the greatest story ever told. My prayer is that you'll not only enjoy these fictional stories of Christmas extras, but you'll get an insight into what life was like in the days when Jesus was born, and also the miracles that took place everywhere he went. So sit back, relax, as we look into the lives of the Christmas extras.
I'm reading from Luke's Gospel, chapter 2, beginning at verse 4. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. And she wrapped him in clothes, and she placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them. This is all the information we're given. Notice there's no mention of an inn, at least as we know them, or an innkeeper, or even a stable, for that matter. All we are left to do is to speculate. It could have happened just like this.
Well, hello, everyone. Oh, I'm so glad that you are here. Welcome to the Keepers. I'm Naomi Keeper, and my husband is Ned. Works out really handy that we have the same first initial. That way, whenever we have to sign all those government documents for the census, we can just write in Keeper. Get it? Well, it's going to be pretty crowded around here for a few days, but you know how those census takers are. They just require that we all come back to our homeland so that we can be registered and counted. And I just love having you all here when you come to Bethlehem. Ned, not quite so much. It's a little harder for him. I think he just doesn't like having his space invaded. I can understand that, but I remember a census about 50 years ago. This place was packed full of relatives, and I was happy about it, but not Ned. One night, he came storming into the room.
You have got this place so packed to the gills with relatives, I can't even hear myself think.
Well, first of all, they're your relatives. And secondly, what am I supposed to do? You know there's a census being taken.
Oh, there you go with a census. Like the emperor even cares about who has property where. All he wants is to know how much to tax everybody.
So now you're angry with me about the government? You know there's nothing I can do about them.
Well, no, but there certainly is something you can do about all these so-called guests.
Well, like what?
I went to my workshop this morning, and do you know what I found?
What?
4 kids from Bethany asleep in my tool bin. They were in my tool bin.
Well, their parents are your second cousins, Nigel and Nancy. I couldn't let them sleep with the animals.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't put anybody out in the stable. I guess you don't want anybody to offend the ragged stray animals you keep picking up.
They are not strays. They are my animals, and they aren't going anywhere. I just have a few lost sheep and a donkey and a goat and a llama.
Yeah. And can you tell me what good is a llama? All he does all day long
now,
is eat
Ned,
and spit.
you just stop right there. My animals are my animals. They're not going anywhere.
All right, you can keep your animals. But get rid of these relatives.
Sure. Which one would you like me to get rid of? That one?
Well, I guess the best way to take care of that would be to put me out.
That's the best idea I've heard all day.
I don't answer that.
I have to, Ned.
Can you help us? My wife is about to give birth.
Sorry, fella, no room in here.
Sorry,
especially
I'm so
for
sorry.
giving birth.
It's okay.
No room at all.
Don't worry about him. I'm sorry. We really are full up in here. But if you want to just go around the corner, we have our stable around there. And our stable hand, Reuben, he can get you settled. It's not much, but it's warm and dry and private. I'll go grab some blankets and I'll be right back. He was such a nervous first-time father. It's just so unfortunate that we really didn't have room for them, but we didn't have the kind of room that they needed for the kind of privacy she would need for giving birth at all. So our cave was around the side of the house, and that's where we kept our animals, and so we let them stay there. But it's just a shame that we didn't welcome them in, especially whenever I learned who that baby was. Not who that baby would become, but who that baby was in that very moment. See, that little family, that family that none of us really knew, even though they were distant relatives, it was Joseph. He had traveled all the way from Nazareth with his betrothed wife, Mary. And in her womb was the Son of God, the Messiah. They named him Jesus. I often wonder what would have happened if Ned and I would have made room for them. Can you imagine? I could have been a witness to the birth of the Christ child. I've learned so many lessons since that night long ago. You know, often we like to sit around and share stories around the fire. Would you like for me to share some of the things that I learned that night? Oh, good. I have notes. You know, I say that I learned those lessons, but really, I have to be honest and say that I'm still learning those lessons. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I feel like God teaches me the same lesson over and over and over. And I think, enough already, I've got the lesson. Well, one time we had this traveler coming through, and he stayed with us for a few days. He was a really odd character. I wasn't sure about him, and he had a really strange name. His name was Keith. Have you ever heard anyone name their kid Keith? Anyway, his name kind of matched his character. But one of the things that he said to me one time, because I had said that, I feel like God keeps teaching me the same lesson over and over. Why does he keep doing that? And he said, well, I've often found that if God has taught me a lesson that I've learned, he doesn't try to keep teaching me the same lesson. That was a hard pill to swallow. But the truth is that these are lessons that I'm still trying to learn because I keep getting opportunities to put them into practice. The first lesson that I feel like I learned from that night so long ago was to make room. To make room for others. So many times I've just filled my life with all these things. I fill up my calendar. I fill up my day. I'm going about all of my plans and my business, and I forget to look for those who may need some extra help. I don't leave any room for others. Sometimes I get so busy doing all my things that I don't even make room for those who are closest to me, those who love me the most and need me the most. Those who I love the most and I need the most. It's kind of like this guest house. We just fill up so much that it doesn't feel like there's room for anything else. And I don't know about you, but often I find that it's hard for me to sacrifice anything, to give up my spot. I didn't ask, but that night long ago, nobody offered to give up their spot so that young couple could come in. It kind of reminds me of the camel caravans. Many of you probably had to take a camel caravan to get here because you came from such long distances. And you know how they work, right? They sell more tickets than they actually have seats for, right? And then they have the gall to ask people, would you be willing to let your baggage go on another camel that may or may not arrive at the same time you do? Not too many people take them up on that. So then the next offer is, if you would give up your spot on this camel caravan and take a later camel caravan, we'll give you a ticket to use on a future camel caravan at your convenience. Have you ever noticed that not too many people take them up on that offer? Sometimes we just want our plans. We don't want to change our plans. We don't want our agenda to be the one that gets sacrificed. But we sure hope that somebody else will sacrifice their spot for us. And so how do we make room for others? Well, one of the ways is that we need to learn to sacrifice our own comfort. Not that we can never be comfortable, but that we remember that our comfort doesn't come first. Our comfort is not the most important thing. We would also learn to give freely and willingly, because we trust that there will be enough to go around, that whatever it is that is asked of us, our needs will also be met in some way, that there will be enough to go around. And we can make room for others whenever we love those who are nearest to us, when we love them well, when we see those who are nearest to us as like practice, where we get to try to do the right thing, where we get to have the hard conversations, where we get to make room, make the difficult choices so that those who are nearest to us can feel the love that we have for them, and then we're able to extend that love out beyond from those who are nearest to us. There's this really sketchy character that's been traveling around. His name is Paul. Some of you might have heard of him. I'm still a little unsure of him because this guy, for years, he spent his life persecuting the church of God and trying to destroy it. But now he goes around preaching that Jesus is the Messiah, and he preaches God's grace. And he's written letters to some of the churches that he has visited all around the area. And he wrote a letter to the church in Galatia. And you know what? I have a piece of it. I am so excited to actually have a piece of this letter. Would you like to see it? It's right here. Oh. This is really cheap papyrus. I think we got it on the clearance bin. But it smells like coffee. But Paul wrote these letters, and sometimes whenever I read them, I just think it feels like he's talking directly to me. And yes, I can read them. I'm not bragging, though. I just really wanted to learn how to read, and so I asked one of the teachers of the law to teach me. And so I've been learning how to read, and I'm so excited to be able to share this. And I hope that if you ever have a piece of one of Paul's letters, or if you ever have the law and the prophets, and if you know how to read, that you would never take it for granted how precious these words are. But this is what Paul said to the church in Galatia about how we can make room for others, how we can care for others. And he says this, he says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. He says, if anyone thinks they are something when they are not, if they think that their way is more important than anyone else's, then they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions, and then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. This means that they're going to do what's right. No matter if anybody sees what they did or not, they're going to do what's right because it's good. And then he says this, let us not become weary of doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. There will be enough to go around. So therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers, those who are closest to us. And so making room for others is about loving them well. It's about sacrificing and being selfless and submitting to one another, not thinking of ourselves more highly than we ought. And in that way, we are making room to extend God's grace. Maybe there's a chance for us to practice how to do that maybe next weekend at the Christmas shop. I also learned the lesson about making room for God. I had no idea that when I didn't make room for those others, that I was missing an opportunity to make room for God. I just got busy doing my things, going about my work, doing the things that I do every day, and I actually forgot the one that I was doing it for. I've known my whole life to offer myself to God and to know that everything that I do should be about recognizing God's work in my life and sharing that work out with others. And Paul even said in the letter that he wrote to the church in Thessalonica, he said, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, that how you go about your day is, he says, then your daily life may win the respect of others. That outsiders will begin to see, and they will then witness our relationship with God. I make room for God whenever I intentionally take my ordinary, everyday life and I place it before God as an offering. When I do this, I can watch for God with expectancy because I will see God. I missed that those many years ago, at least that first night. I just simply wasn't expecting the Messiah to knock on my door. No matter how many times I said, God, would you just knock on my door? But I've learned, and I know better now, that even in the ordinary, I can expect to see God. See, after that first night, the shepherds who were watching their flocks at night, they came running through Bethlehem the next morning, and they were shouting that the Messiah had been born and that he was in our manger. That baby that was wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger was God. He is God. God with us. Emmanuel. God always with us. And so if God is always with us, then we can expect to see him if we make room for him. Making room for him means that we'll be on the lookout, that we will be intentionally laying our lives before him, and that we will be seeking him in everything we do, because he stands at the door and knocks. You know, in the law and the prophets, that sacred, old, ancient testament of God's grace to God's people, it says, if you seek him, you will find him. Now, I don't know about you, but maybe there have been times that you've just wondered, well, where do I seek him? I've been seeking him and I can't find him. Is God just playing some cosmic game of hide and seek? How do I find God? Where do I find God? And I think so often we just simply aren't looking for him in the right places. Because I think the answer to that, how do we seek God? How do we see God? Comes back to the first lesson, that we make room for others. When Jesus was a young man, he was traveling around the area, and I heard that he was in Jerusalem, and so I went up to listen to him teach. And one of the things that he taught a parable about what it would be like whenever he comes back. And he said that when we serve the least and the last and the lonely and the lost, that we serve him. We serve Jesus, the Messiah, God himself. And so this compassion and this serving others, when it becomes a part of our ordinary everyday life, when it becomes what we do with our lives, we can expect to see God because it will open our eyes to seeing Jesus as we serve those others. Our ordinary everyday lives of walking in the Spirit. Paul told us in that letter to the Galatians that we are to walk by the Spirit because the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. He says of all those things, there's no law against any of those things. Can you imagine what our world would be like if all of us who were followers of Jesus would walk in the Spirit in that way, and that would be the fruit that is produced in our lives? That the way we interact with others would be those kinds of good things. And in that way, when we walk by the Spirit, when we keep in step with the Spirit, we will extend grace to others. And when we see Jesus in them, they return that grace back to us. My hope and prayer is that we would all recognize Jesus in the stranger. That we would be aware that there is always a possibility that it is Christ coming to us in a stranger's guise. And as much as we seek God, I think the most beautiful thing about it is that God has sought us. God has come to find us. That night so long ago, it proves the lengths that God would go to, that he would come to this earth and he would leave all the riches and the glory of heaven so that he could come and be with us in the form of a baby, a helpless, poor, humble baby lying in a manger because there was no guest room made available for him. Oh, that we would remember that God came, that God is here, and that he is coming again. Behold, he stands at the door and knocks. Will you make room for him?
Naomi, there's another family here. Can you make a little more room?
What's really awesome is Ned also became a follower of Jesus, and now he has learned how to make room. Isn't that
Naomi.
awesome? I'm coming. Y'all scooch in a little bit. We need to make some more room.